Today is all about lowering your cholesterol. It should come as no surprise that tens of millions of Americans are living right now with high cholesterol. Many may not even realize that they have it. Why? Because really there aren't a whole lot of symptoms. Nonetheless, this should become a priority of your health, and that is why we are prioritizing that today with the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Dr. Michael Greger. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much. In fact, over 100 million people are on statin drugs themselves, and way more have high cholesterol because of the standard American diet. Dun, 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 dun.
I know, man, we do need that ominous music to play every time somebody says the standard American diet. It is a deadly thing, man.
It is indeed. In fact, according to the Global Burden of Disease Study, the largest study of disease risk factors in human history, the number one cause of death in these United States is the American diet, bumping tobacco smoke to number two. Cigarettes only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills many more. So the single most important decision we can make in life for our health and longevity is what to feed ourselves and our family.
Amen to that. And that's why you've got this new book out, Lower LDL Cholesterol Naturally with Food, Simple Ways to Add Proven LDL Reducers to Your Everyday Routine. And on top of that, you also have this big seminar coming up on October 10th, but you have to register by October 8th, all about it. Why is cholesterol right now at the forefront of what it is you want to talk about?
Okay, LDL cholesterol, or bad cholesterol, is the primary driver of our primary killer of men and women cardiovascular disease. Okay, but it has for the last decade, not the last decade, the last century. What is so different now? Well, there used to be targets for LDL cholesterol. If you haven't had a heart attack or stroke yet, you don't have known heart disease, then the target for primary prevention for LDL cholesterol was 70, right? Get your LDL below 70 and don't worry about it. Scratch it off the list, worry about other things in life, but you didn't have to worry about your cholesterol. Unfortunately, all the guidelines have moved towards getting rid of targets. And now the consensus is all of a sudden, get your LDL as low as possible. There's no threshold below which further LDL lowering won't further reduce our risk of heart attack, strokes, or sudden death. And we realize this not because all of a sudden people ate really healthy diets and could get that low. There's these new classes of cholesterol-lowering drugs beyond statins that can drive people's cholesterol exceedingly low, regardless of what people eat. And then we realize, oh my God, wait a second. The lower, the better. And so wait a second. Now, no longer can people eating healthy diets sit on their laurels, right? The average LDL for a vegan, about 68, so nailed the target. But all of a sudden, even if you have great cholesterol, it could be better because the lower the better. Now, the reason more people aren't prescribed cholesterol-lowering statin drugs, well, wait a second, if everyone could benefit from LDL lowering, is because of the associated drawbacks, such as the increased diabetes risk, right? So drugs are limited to those who have high enough risk that the pros outweigh the cons, right? Okay, but what if there was something we could do that had no cons? What if there were safe, simple, side effect-free steps we could take to lower our LDL cholesterol, like eating certain healthy foods every day? Okay, with no downsides, well then everyone should be eating them to get their LDL as low as possible, regardless of whether or not they're on medications or not. And that's what the new book is all about.
Let me ask you about statins here before we turn to the dietary approach. Do you think that people are overprescribed them? Because I know somebody close to me who had a stroke but did not have high cholesterol and then was prescribed statins and said you would need to be on them for the rest of your life, even though they determined that the stroke had to do with a hormonal thing, like they had a bad reaction to birth control, essentially. And it just puzzled me why that person would have been prescribed. And I was just wondering, is this just a standard course of action?
If you have a stroke or heart attack, then don't pass go, don't get $200. You immediately get an indication for a cholesterol-lowering statin drug. So what certain hormonal changes can do, like taking both birth control pills, it increases the coagulability, the clotting, how easily your ability of your blood clots. And so that can lead to clotting diseases like a stroke. Another thing that can increase the called platelet aggregability, like a platelet clumping, this thickness or clotting efficiency of the blood, is having a high LDL cholesterol. And so for someone who's had a stroke or heart attack, even if it wasn't due directly to the high cholesterol, anyone who's had one in the past, they're concerned about a future one. So they want to reduce the risk as low as possible. In terms of whether too many people are prescribed these drugs, I think you can make arguments in both directions. Not enough people are prescribed these drugs, and too many people are prescribed these drugs, depending on your own kind of risk tolerance. So if you actually fully inform patients how relatively ineffective these drugs are, and just to give a little capsule. So, typically you'll hear these, drugs, reduce your risk of having a heart attack by 30%. That's what the ads you see on TV say. But that's like over a few year period, going from 3% risk down to a 2% risk. And so that is indeed drop risk by about a third, but the absolute risk reduction is only 1%. It's only about 1 in 100 people over that time would benefit from taking these drugs. If you fully inform people about how relatively ineffective these drugs are, 75% of people refuse to take them. Because it's just not worth taking a drug every day for the rest of your life, not worth risking side effects. They just won't do it. Okay. Now, that's a problem for the people. That makes sense kind of from an individual standpoint, right? I'm going to decide that, to me, it's just not worth the benefit. Okay. But if everyone were to do that, if 75% of statin users currently were to do that, tens of thousands of people would die, because on a population scale, even if 1 in 100 people are benefited, so many millions of people have high cholesterol, that could be a lot of disease and death. So doctors are in this bind, is what's called the prevention paradox. Doctors are in this bind that if they actually are truthful, if they fully inform patients about how these drugs don't really work as well as most people think, then they know most patients are going to say, no thanks, doc. Okay. But what if that one person is the 1 in 100 person that, would have been spared a heart attack had they started those drugs? Imagine how you'd feel as a doctor, right? Whereas if you bloat the benefits, minimize the risks, right, and kind of hype up these drugs to get patients to fill their prescriptions, then you could potentially save their lives. But it's this kind of very paternalistic attitude. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, it's your body, your choice. People should be fully informed about the benefits and risks, and then make up their own mind. Well, unfortunately, so doctors, unfortunately, don't take this informed consent far enough, in that people not only deserve the truth, they deserve the whole truth, meaning they should be told about the pros and cons of pills and the benefits of dietary interventions. Okay, here's how much pills may be able to reduce your risk. Here's how much changes in diet can reduce your risk. Okay, here's the pros and cons of the drugs, and here's the side effects of the healthy dietary changes, which are less diabetes, not increased diabetes with the pills. Less risk of a long list of diseases, and so you just get kind of benefits instead of the baggage. And so, unfortunately, doctors are in this weird place where they're kind of twisting the truth to get people to take these pills instead of fully informing patients about drugs versus diet. And I wanted to find out how we could absolutely maximize dietary changes, regardless of whether or not you're on drugs, to lower LDL as much as possible.
All right, and we're going to get into those dietary changes, but let me ask you first. I mean, so you just talked about the potential benefit of the drug, and it's really reduced to like 1%. Is there a one-to-one comparison in terms of efficacy for a dietary intervention versus that statin intervention?
Well, so if you so the statin companies, can randomize thousands of people to years of these drugs because these are multi-billion-dollar drugs. In fact, Lipitor is the best-selling drug of all time, bringing literally billions of dollars. And so they have the money to run these studies. If you look at now, we do have randomized controlled trials, obviously, of healthy diets like Ornish, to prove that indeed we may be able to actually reverse the progression, open up arteries without drugs, without surgery, just with a healthy plant-based diet and lifestyle. The closest we have in terms of kind of estimating the absolute risk reduction would be the Esselstyn case theories. Took over 100 patients with this really kind of intractable heart disease, where doctors basically dump their worst patients onto poor Esselstyn, who put them on a healthy diet, but not everyone followed the instructions to go on a healthy diet. So we had this kind of natural experiment set up, even though it was not people weren't randomized to eat the diet or not, but you could compare those that actually stuck with the diet versus those who were like, forget diet. And you could see the dramatic. So basically, there's like 10 times greater benefit for that kind of dietary change, which wasn't a lifestyle change. It was really just changing to a whole food plant-based diet, appeared to be 10 times more effective than what you'd see with drugs. And of course, you just get the beneficial side effects.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive into some specifics here. Talking about LDL, so naturally we're going to bring fat into the conversation, specifically saturated fat. The saturated fats that are found in plant foods versus those in animal foods, how do they compare and contrast when it comes to a person's cholesterol?
Oh, both just as bad. So, something like coconut oil, which is these rare saturated plant fats, these tropical oils, coconut oil, palm kernel oil, found a lot of junk food, raise your cholesterol as much as lard does, as much as butterfat does. And so when we say we need people to cut down on saturated fat, we're talking about primarily meat and dairy, where most of the saturated fat comes from, but also for some of these processed foods that have added tropical oils. In the past, I focused on foods that raise our cholesterol that we should all try to minimize, like the saturated fat, trans fats, and dietary cholesterol. Dietary cholesterol found mostly in eggs, but throughout all animal products. Trans fats now mostly from animal products. Now that's been removed largely from processed foods. And the saturated fat mostly from meat and dairy, but also from some of those junk foods. Minimizing those foods that raise our cholesterol will dramatically reduce our cholesterol. In fact, can do so as much as kind of an introductory dose of a statin drug. But that used to be enough. But now we need to go out of our way to actively add foods to our diet that pull cholesterol from our body. That was the rationale behind the portfolio diet, which was developed in 2003 by Dr. David Jenkins, University of Toronto. Famous researcher, basically said, okay, let's do a plant-based diet, but let's add a portfolio of cholesterol lowering foods. They each lower cholesterol through a different mechanism, so they should add up. And that has been the most effective cholesterol lowering diet in history. Okay, but they came at the time, 2003, they came up with 4 cholesterol lowering foods. Okay, why stop there? It's been 20 years. What else has been found to lower cholesterol? So I dug into the research and uncovered every simple, safe way to lower our cholesterol, whether or not you're on statins, by incorporating certain cholesterol lowering foods, including herbs and spices, supplements, everything that could lower LDL cholesterol by at least 10 milligrams per deciliter. In randomized controlled trials, that was kind of the cutoff. We found 13 things, so we could make kind of a portfolio plus diet to lower our LDL, to lower our heart disease risk as much as possible.
And I'm sure those are all mentioned in the book, and certainly you're going to be talking about them in the seminar. But give us a preview. Can you rattle off a few for us?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I mean, it's kind of, it's great that there's so many different options, right? But I'm afraid that it's going to be a little overwhelming. Whether they read the book, go to the seminar. But I don't want people to be overwhelmed. Even if you just one of them, that's fantastic. But I did kind of as an experiment say, okay, is there a way to actually incorporate all 13 into your daily diet? And so I have a Dr. Greger in the kitchen cooking video kind of thing where I make all sorts of kind of concoctions of various powders to sprinkle on things to actually to maximize LDL lowering for those who want to go all in. But again, I make a point to say, look, even if you do one or two of these simple things, it can be totally worth it. And so you just need to kind of pick and choose to find stuff that fits into your life. So the first thing I do is I go through the Daily Dozen, right? So the Daily Dozen, the healthiest of healthy foods I encourage people to fit into their daily life. Available as a free app, Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen. So that's basically how I eat, and I encourage people to eat as an aspirational goal to hit off all these things. And so the first thing I did is, okay, well, this is the list of things I'm already telling people to eat. Is there a way to tweak it to maximize LDL cholesterol reduction? So one of the things on my Daily Dozen is I encourage people to eat legumes every day: beans, split peas, chickpeas, or lentils, the healthiest source of plant protein. In fact, the food associated with the greatest extension of longevity. If there's one thing we could eat to make ourselves live longer, it would be legumes, as the Global Burden of Disease study, but that's in my How Not to Age book. Okay, but what are we going to do? How can we tweak the beans to lower LDL further? A single tablespoon of black soybeans significantly lowers LDL cholesterol. And it turns out there's these anthocyanin pigments in the seed coat, in the black seed coat, that actually pull our cholesterol down. You can show this in actually a placebo-controlled, because it's such a small amount, a placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized controlled trial. And so you say, well, wait a second, black soybeans, where do you even get black soybeans? You can buy cans of black soybeans. Eden brand has a can, no salt added black soybeans. One can will last you a whole month, right? Because you only need a tablespoon a day. And you say, well, wait a second, the can isn't going to last even in the fridge for a month. What you do is you get these little silicone baby food trays, which have just like little, kind of dimples. And so you buy a can of black soybeans, and then you just put a tablespoon in each one of the little dimples, and you put it in the freezer, cover it up, put it in the freezer, and then every day you just pop out a little ball, just like a little golf ball size of black soybeans, and you throw it into any meal you're making, and then they thaw out, and you won't even notice that they're there. It's just a small amount, but that's one way you do it. Of course, you can put them in an Instant Pot or boil them on the stove. And so just pennies a day, it's probably not even pennies a day. You'll get that LDL lowering ability. Okay. What else we got? Okay. I tell people to eat berries every day, the healthiest fruits. Okay. Well, are there any berries that actually lower cholesterol? Yes. 2 tablespoons of dried barberries. So berberine is a very common cholesterol lowering supplement. So 500 milligrams of berberine can actually significantly lower cholesterol. But I hate supplements. Why do I hate supplements? Because you never know what's in the supplement, right? God knows what they're putting in it. It's such a wild, wild west of regulation. Now, sometimes you may have to take supplements like vitamin B12, but if we can get away with not taking supplements, well, let's do it. And so instead of 500 milligrams of berberine, and if you actually go and look at berberine supplements on the market, there's studies found that some of them don't have any berberine at all. Some have all sorts of weird contaminants. You just can't trust the supplement industry. So it turns out that the most concentrated dietary source are barberries, which are these little bright red fruits. You can buy Indian spice stores. You can buy them online. It's used to make a very famous Middle Eastern rice dish, a Persian rice dish. And so you can buy them. They're tart. They're delicious. Anyway, so you can get that active dose of berberine, that 500 milligrams, in 2 tablespoons of dry barberries. And so you can get a little 2 tablespoon scoop and you sprinkle on anything. This morning, I had it on my oatmeal. You can throw it in a smoothie. You can do it. I mean, you could just eat them like part of like trail mix or whatever. Anyway, so not just berries every day, but for LDL lowering, we can use those 2 tablespoons of dry barberries. Now, for each of these, I talk about like the pros, the contraindications. So, for example, berberine is not. We're not sure it's safe for pregnant and lactating women, so you would not want to do 2 tablespoons of barberries if you are pregnant, for example. And of course, so I go into all the kind of details in the book, but just wanted to give you a quick little overview. We can do 2 more really quick. Okay, fruits. Other fruits, part of my daily dozen. Are there any other fruits? Let me go back to the berries. Sumac. Have you heard of sumac? Sumac is this spice. It's literally just a powdered berry. It's a little berry that's so potently flavored. You just grind up the berry, and that's sumac spice. So it's just ground berry. And a half of a teaspoon of sumac, half a teaspoon of the ground red berry lowers your cholesterol, lowers LDL, significantly lowers to over 10 points. Amazing. Okay. So that actually goes in the spices section, but technically it's a berry. Okay. Anyway, so okay, good. We got another one under our belt. And you can spend, and I don't know, again, you can spend it on anything. You can just take it. You can whatever. Okay. And okay, fruits, other fruits. So I tell people they should not just eat berries, but other fruits. Are there any other fruits that make the cut for LDL lowering? There was this remarkable study on, it only tested women, but on eating 12 dried apple rings a day. So you know those dried apple rings is single ingredient apples. And you know they're kind of chewy, they're delicious, but who knew there was this dramatic drop in LDL cholesterol. Now that would be the equivalent of 2 fresh apples a day. So if you don't want to do the apple rings, presumably the fresh works as well, even though it hasn't been tested. We think it's probably because the pectin fiber, who knows? So I encourage people, if you're gonna have a snack, well then there's one snack you could do. Oh my God, we can go as many as you want.
Well, I mean, I know that we can, but we got to save some for the seminar. We got to get people over to the.
I just want this information out there. I mean, that's the most important thing. So, but this is the book will be available in softcover and in ebook and in audiobook and basically in video book form. That's what the seminar is. I took all the content in the book, turned it into videos. And so that's basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through, play all the videos. We'll do Q&A. We'll do the Gregor in the kitchen video. And so it depends how people learn. So if you're like a visual learner, I encourage people to sign up for the seminar. It's on October 10th. Registration ends on October 8th. You may also want to get the book just for the references or to have the recipes there or whatever, however you learn best. There's a way you can get it. I just want to get this information out there.
Yeah, and that's why you're a good dude. And the book is only $10.
And all proceeds from the sale of all my books, including this one, goes directly to charity, of course.
Yeah. I want to go back to the sumac. So where does one find sumac other than flipping through
basically
the phone?
Go to any grocery store, you go to the spice section, and there's this thing that no one's ever looks over. I don't know why I haven't tried it. It's actually delicious. It's very tart. So it adds kind of this sourness to dishes. I forget what it's used for. I think it's used in kind of Mediterranean cooking. But boy, you can imagine using it in Indian cooking or any kind of, anyway. And again, it's a teeny amount. Just a half teaspoon. So there's some other spices that significantly lower cholesterol. What's nice about spice studies is that you can do placebo-controlled double-blind studies. You know, it's hard to do blinded studies for diet because you can't stuff a cabbage in a capsule. So if you want to know if cabbage is good for you, yeah, you can randomize people to eat cabbage or not, but there may be a placebo effect. Oh, cabbage is probably good for me and may have an effect beyond, and now you could randomize a placebo group, the control group, to like eat some other kind of vegetable instead. But then who knows, maybe the other vegetable has some beneficial effects. It's really hard to tease it out. But with a spice, if something is only a half a teaspoon, you can put it in capsules, opaque capsules, so you can't tell which is which, versus placebo, which is like cornstarch or, sugar pill or whatever. And you can even dust the sugar pill with a little of the spice so they both actually smell the same. Now you may burp and be able to taste differently. It's not absolutely perfect, but you can basically randomize people to take secretly, unbeknownst to them, take the spice or not, and then just measure their cholesterol before and after a few weeks. And that's how you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, cause and effect, these spices lower your cholesterol. And so we really have the strongest amount of evidence. Now, it's not necessarily that spices are better than other foods are doing it, but we just have the evidence is so strong. So what else can lower our cholesterol? A third of a teaspoon of amla, which is another dried berry, another berry. Amla is dried Indian gooseberry powder. You can actually get gooseberries in frozen sections in Indian stores, unfortunately, because they're absolutely nasty, inedible. It's really a medicinal.
I was just talking with Cyrus Kambata and his wife Kylie Buckner about that. They're big fans of that, and they're like, when we first started, before we learned how to mix it properly, we had to pinch our nose and do the shots every morning. Yeah, right, it was just brutal, man.
It's okay, but only need a third of a teaspoon. In terms of cholesterol lowering. A third of a teaspoon. Now it's that's a lot. And so I actually talk about, that's actually part of my BAT powder. It's one of the recipes in the book, BAT, which is black cumin, amla, and turmeric. And I talk about ways that you can take it. There is the kind of curry slurry method where you just got to hold your nose and shot it back with some water or something. And okay. Oh, you can put in, a smoothie and probably wouldn't be able to taste it. But what I talk about is this edible film, which is a single ingredient potato starch. It's just these little discs of basically transparent little super, super tissue thin little circles or squares of potato starch, which you can put any nasty tasting stuff in and wrap it up a little wonton. You dip in water and you drink it without tasting it at all. So that's where all the nasty stuff goes. Basically, I break up all the 13 of the different things into tasty, nasty, and neutral. And so the nasty stuff goes in the potato starch pouches. The tasty stuff actually just goes in my meals. Like, I actually like the taste of barberries, so I'm going to sprinkle those in my meals. And then the neutral stuff that doesn't taste like anything, for example, psyllium husk powder, sold as Metamucil with all sorts of artificial sweeteners and colors and blah, blah, blah. No, but you can just get straight psyllium husk powder and a tablespoon a day. So it's basically a teaspoon with each meal. With sufficient water. You need to drink like a cup of water with every teaspoon. But psyllium powder basically has no taste. It's basically like ground flax seeds or wheat germ or something. And so that is where I make this, what I call my Portfolio Plus powder, which is like, I don't know, 8 things or something, all neutral, that you can put together in specific quantities and make a month's supply at a time. And then you can sprinkle that on meals. It doesn't really change the taste of the meals, but you can nail, half a dozen things at the same time.
Man, the fact that you've come up with this concoction in the powder, like, I'm just picturing you as like this mad scientist with the blender bad. And everything.
I mean, it's a lot of fun for people who just want to like, oh, let's make a game out of this, to like try to get it all. At the same time, it comes off a little kooky, right? I mean, It's like, you can imagine someone completely new to healthy eating, right? And here's some guy, mixing weird stuff together and taking things they've never even heard of. And it's just like, for someone eating a standard American diet, like, what they need to hear is, just reduce your consumption of soda, of processed meat, bacon, and hot dogs, lunch meat. They need super basic lifestyle advice, right? They don't need this like nitty gritty, high level, graduate level, next degree kind of stuff. But unfortunately, when stuff goes online, you can't really select the audience. So someone is going to come to this and be like, wait a second, if that's what plant-based eating is all about, forget this. I'm going to go back to my double cheeseburger. It's a little, I'm a little conflicted, right? And I over and over, I keep emphasizing, look, if you do anything, if you just eat an apple, I'm happy, right? Oh my God. If you just eat one less bologna sandwich, I'm totally happy. It's going to help your cholesterol. It's going to, okay. Now, if you want to do the next step, I'm here for you. And I got a long list of stuff to do, but let's not get overwhelmed. Not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and so hopefully there's a little something for everyone, but if you just like look at it out of the blue, it's gonna look a little crazy.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. It's like you own it, right? It's like you recognize fully that compared to what the majority of people are eating, this is just batty. Like this is, yeah, dude. And that's what makes it fun, you know. It like it gives people that like little bit of permission to be like, oh, this is kooky, but it's still cool because he admits that it's kooky. He's not saying that this is normal because God knows it's not normal compared to what life they've been leading, man. So that's cool, man.
I know, and hopefully, and you know, I talk to people about, you know, there's actually free ways you can get your LDL cholesterol tested. In fact, you can even send it off. They send you a little thing in the mail. You prick your finger and you drip your blood on a little slip and you put it back and you send it back. I think it's even postage paid. And there's a charitable foundation that actually does this because someone died from heart disease early and they're like, this is terrible. No one should die. This should be free to everybody. And so they set up this family charitable foundation and we're like, LDL tests everyone for free. Boom, you just fill it online and they send it to you. Of course, you can get it through your doctor. A lot of like drugstores have, like CVS and stuff, have free cholesterol testing, or you actually buy these little machines. They're not too expensive, where it comes with little strips and you can test your cholesterol as much as you want. So you can test your cholesterol every week. And then you can tweak, you can change things. It's like, okay, I really hate taking this stupid powder. Does it even matter? All right, well, I'm going to do this same diet, but with or without this powder for a week and see what this does for me. I mean, just because it works on average, that's what these studies show. They work on average. Doesn't mean it necessarily works for me. In fact, you know, one of the studies that really made an impact on me was looking at phytosterols. That's one of the rare supplements that I actually recommend people take in this book. So we have such good evidence that on average, they can significantly lower LDL cholesterol. I recommend 2 grams a day, and I talk about which ones are out there, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But if you look at the studies, and you do what's called a cascade plot, where it shows the cholesterol changes of every single individual, even though on average overall, I think it was a 13-point drop in LDL cholesterol, thereby making my cut for over 10. Great. So let's include in the diet if it's safe, and I talk about the safety. Okay. But that was the average drop. Some people, like, they dropped their LDL 40 points taking the same amount. That's amazing. You might be lucky in being that. Other people, it didn't work at all. They took this supplement, wasted all this money, and their LDL didn't budge at all. Whatever their physiology, you know, was a little off the average. Okay, but here's the critical piece. In certain rare individuals, their cholesterol actually went up. They took this supplement versus placebo, and on the supplement, their cholesterol went up. They would have been better taking the sugar pill. Okay, now that's scary, right? Because here I am telling people to take something, but it may actually be making things worse. That's why I encourage people to, before you do this, you know, let's get your cholesterol tested, start adding these things. You can test various components, see what actually works, and make sure, yes, make sure that you indeed follow the average, that you know, you fall into the pack where you get the same cholesterol. We get the expected cholesterol reduction. And, you know, one of the, something that really struck out at me looking at these kind of this personalized data where you actually look on a N of 1 studies, meaning you just study one person, you try different things to find out whether it works for you, not just for on the average. Some people, ready for this? Are you sitting down? Some people, caffeine makes them sleepy, literally sleepy. Isn't that like absolute bonkers? Somehow they have brains where caffeine actually makes them go to sleep. And so it's very rare, right? But that really does show you, just because, you know, when we say caffeine, you know, makes people jittery, wakes people up, no, that's on average. And it is on average. So that's like a true statement. But is it a true statement for you? You don't know until you put it to the test. You drink some coffee, and if you feel sleepy, you shouldn't just drink it because you're trying to wake up. Obviously, it's not working for you. So I talk a lot about this kind of N of 1 testing. Let's make sure it works for you. And thankfully, there's something we can track. For some disease conditions, there's no biomarker. We don't know if it's helping or not. But like for weight loss, you want to know if it helps? Okay, you can tell. Is what I'm doing working? Let's look at the scale, right? Okay, for cholesterol, is something working? Let's look at the cholesterol. Let's actually see how it moves. And what's nice about diet is within 2 weeks of a dietary change, you can see a difference. So you know how they say you start a cholesterol lowering drug, come back in a few months? It
Yeah.
may take months for one of these drugs to work, but within 2 weeks, you get the maximum effect, right? So basically, all the effect you're going to get from a dietary change, you're going to get within the first 2 weeks. And so that makes it really easy to be like, all right, let's try this. Look, maybe I really like this food that I know I shouldn't be eating, right? It's got some like, whatever. It's like my favorite little comfort food, and I don't eat it that often, but like, does it really matter? I mean, the big thing I'm really worried about, not that that's the only bad thing about saturated fat, but the big thing I'm worried about is my LDL cholesterol. All right, let's see if I completely cut it out, if it's actually going to make a difference or not. And so, yeah, I encourage people to really, again, this is the most important indicator, right? Of if you could pick one lab value, it would be LDL cholesterol, primary driver of our primary killer. In fact, if you had to know whether a diet was good or whether a particular food was good, if you could just ask one question, it would be, what does this food do to my LDL cholesterol? You want to know if a diet is healthy or not? Well, diets can have all sorts of things, increase diabetes risk or decrease that. But if the number one killer is heart disease, then the first question is, wait a second, does this diet make your LDL go up, like a ketogenic diet or some of these paleolithic diets, or does it make it go, or like carnivore diets, or does it make it go down, like plant-based diets and certain Mediterranean diets? And so, okay, well, that's a good first step. Is this food healthy? Let's find out what it does to my LDL cholesterol compared to what I would be eating instead.
All right, let's go rapid fire here as we close things up. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I want to circle back to oils. We've mentioned tropical oils, but olive oil seems to still be a hotly debated topic. What do we know about the connection between olive oil consumption and LDL cholesterol?
Oh, well, we actually have a study, thanks to some great researchers that we know and love, that took people and asked the question. So when you ask about, often most studies historically have been adding olive oil in the context of a crappy diet, like a standard American diet, right? And so it's like, whether or not olive oil makes things worse or better, often depends on what it's replacing. So if you have people who are, using butter or lard or some of these animal fats, and they switch over their fat to olive oil, well, then, oh my God, they're going to get way better because they're not eating those saturated animal fats. And you're like, okay, well, is that really a benefit of olive oil, or is that just a benefit of cutting down on those animal fats? And so what what the new study showed was, okay, well, let's put everybody on a vegan diet, but a vegan diet with extra virgin olive oil or without extra virgin olive oil, and let's see what happens to their LDL cholesterol. Again, there's lots of things we can test. We can test inflammation. We can test. Okay, but let's start at the top. Most important was the LDL cholesterol, and it turns out that you're better off vegan diet without the extra virgin olive oil than a vegan diet with the extra virgin olive oil, because adding extra virgin olive oil to a vegan diet actually increases your LDL cholesterol.
That was Dr. Monica Agarwal study, if I'm not mistaken.
Agarwal!
Yeah.
Shout out to Monica.
Yeah. She's pretty cool. All right. Let's see. We've talked a lot about foods, but what about green tea? I was just speaking with Dr. Christy Funk to kick off our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign. She was really touting the benefits in terms of cancer prevention, but I'm wondering if green tea may also have a beneficial effect on cholesterol.
Unfortunately, no. But I totally 100% behind green tea. In fact, one of the healthiest beverages one could possibly eat. I talk about it, shout it from the rooftops in How Not to Age. 3 cups of green tea a day. And this is decaf or not. 3 cups of green tea a day associated with a 23% decreased risk in all-cause mortality. Death from all causes put together. Amazing. Whereas drinking coffee only decreases your risk by about 13%. So coffee is healthy. Green tea is even healthier, but it didn't reach my cutoff. It's possible that green tea drops your cholesterol a few points, but again, I just wanted to, because I knew there's going to be a long list, right? We already got 13 things. If I wanted to include things that drop your LDL 5 points, in fact, the minimal clinically important difference in LDL, 2 to 3 points, meaning you should do, if there's something that decreases your LDL cholesterol that's safe, that drops your LDL cholesterol even 2 to 3 points, it's worth doing, which is amazing. That's showing how bad LDL cholesterol is. 2 to 3 points. But if I included everything that drops, LDL like 5 points or more than 2 to 3 points, not only the book would be long, and I don't care about long books. My books are crazy.
Oh no, I know.
but it would just get more complicated. And I want people. Let's just stick to the main things, the big things first, and let's at least hit that 10. So actually, green tea may very well have decreased LDL a few points. In fact, clinically relevant few points. But because it didn't hit the 10, it didn't make the book.
And lastly, I, for whatever reason, have been on a mushroom and garlic kick recently. And
you're making me hungry.
I'm telling you, man, like 2 delicious foods. Is there a connection between that and any sort of cholesterol lowering effect?
Oh my God, you are a smart man. Or your body is smart. Okay, one of the most potent, in fact, is it the most potent? It is, oh no, not the most, it's tied for the most potent spice for lowering cholesterol. No, it actually wins. Sorry. 1/8 of a teaspoon. A single eighth of a teaspoon may actually be a 10th of a teaspoon, but I think the science showed it's actually 10th of a teaspoon. There's no such thing as a 10th of a teaspoon spoon, right?
Not that I know.
You get a ring of measuring spoons. The smallest you're going to get is 1/8 of a teaspoon. So you're not even going to be. So even though technically I think it's only 10th of a teaspoon of garlic powder, just straight garlic powder a day, I think in the book I'd say just 1/8, because then something people can measure. People like being able to measure stuff. Anyway, 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic powder, or a quarter, if you want to your garlic fresh, that's equivalent to a quarter clove of fresh garlic. So I encourage people to eat a quarter clove of fresh garlic every single day, or just 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic powder. And so I have a big thing of garlic powder, which is super cheap. I just sprinkle it on foods. To get that, teeny little, basically dusting that lowers cholesterol. So I guess you could say the most single concentrated LDL lowering substance on the planet is garlic powder, which is like so ridiculously dirt cheap. You can buy it at any like corner convenience store. So more potent than the amla, right? And the sumac was 1/2 teaspoon. So yeah, amazing. Okay, I'm so glad you brought that up. And mushrooms are delicious. They have these longevity vitamins like ergothioneine and spermidine. So all sorts of benefits, but don't hit the 10-point cutoff.
All right, well, that's good news for garlic, man, because I mean, garlic, that's just one of those spices you literally can put it on pretty much anything, and
I wish everyone thought that, but when I tell people to eat garlic, there's this real like, oh my God, I'm worried about my breath, I'm worried about my whatever. But all right, well,
and yet they'll readily eat an onion. I don't know. I don't just tell them to get over it.
But anyway, yeah. But I mean, I can't imagine 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic is gonna change anyone's body odor.
No. All right, before we go, I got a little bit of a bone to pick with you. You broke my heart, but you didn't know it. So over the summer, we're getting ready for the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine, and I believe I mentioned briefly to you, like, we were trying to set up this game show at the conference. Did you want to do it? You seemed all in for it. But my colleagues were like, we don't want to overtax Dr. Greger. We don't want to overtax him. Let's just have him do the presentation. I was like, okay, that stinks. And then what do I see on Instagram at the Vegan Superhero Retreat, the Greger Games?
It was so much fun. It was so awesome. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I'm all down. You tell them next time, sign me up. Right. I did a panel and presentation, but there's no reason I can't do it all. Although I would feel bad for the other contestants. Just saying.
I mean, I think we could have used some help that night. But you know what? I mean, I'm glad that the Greger Games that I saw, they looked fantastic.
Oh my God, it was so they're going to edit it and put it on YouTube.
Are they?
So stay tuned.
Okay.
So it'll be out there. It was a blast.
I'm looking forward to this. I definitely am. But I want to recreate it with our own unique brand of magic here, Dr. Greger. All right, man.
I'm down.
You're the man. All right, so here's the deal. Before we get to that game show, because that's going to be in the future, we do have this seminar. Again, registration closes October 8th, but the actual date is October 10th. And then, of course, there is a link to pick up your copy of the book right now in the show description and in the episode notes. Dr. Greger, thank you as always. You are the man.
Thank you so much. So excited to get this out in the world and appreciate your help in doing so. Keep up the good work.